You know what's absolutely insane? Right now, as you're watching this video, your brain is running approximately 6,000 thoughts per day. And here's the terrifying part. Most of them are completely invisible to you, operating in the background like some kind of mental autopilot that you never agreed to install. And among those thousands of thoughts, there's a specific pattern, a hidden mechanism that's been hijacking your nervous system and manufacturing anxiety out of thin air. And the worst part is that nobody ever taught you how to turn it off. But what if I told you that there's a mind hack, something so simple yet so profound, that once you understand it, you can literally interrupt the anxiety response before it even starts? No pills, no years of therapy, just a fundamental shift in how you interact with your own mind. Stay with me, because what I'm about to share with you is going to change everything you thought you knew about anxiety. And by the end of this video, you're going to have a tool that you can use anywhere, anytime to break free from the grip of anxious thoughts. Now, before we dive deep into this, I need you to understand something crucial about how anxiety actually works, because most people have it completely backwards. See, we've been taught that anxiety is this external thing that happens to us, like catching a cold or getting caught in the rain. Something bad happens, we feel anxious, end of story. But that's not how it works at all. Anxiety isn't something that happens to you. It's something your mind does, and that distinction is absolutely everything. Think about it like this. When you feel anxious, what's actually happening in your body? Your heart starts racing, your palms get sweaty, your breathing becomes shallow. You might feel tension in your chest or your stomach. These are real physical sensations, nobody's denying that. But here's the critical question. What triggered those sensations? Was it the event itself, or was it your mind's interpretation of the event? This is where things get really interesting. Neuroscientists have discovered that there's a tiny almond-shaped structure in your brain called the amygdala. And this little guy is essentially your brain's alarm system. Its job is to scan your environment for threats and trigger the fight-or-flight response when it detects danger. Now, back when we were living in caves and running from saber-toothed tigers, this system was incredibly useful. If you saw a tiger, your amygdala would sound the alarm, flood your body with adrenaline and cortisol, and give you the energy to either fight or run for your life. The problem is that your amygdala hasn't evolved much since then. It can't tell the difference between a real physical threat and a perceived psychological threat. So when you're about to give a presentation at work, or you're worried about what someone thinks of you, or you're anxious about your financial situation, your amygdala treats these situations exactly the same way it would treat a saber-toothed tiger. It sounds the alarm, dumps stress hormones into your system, and suddenly you're having a full-blown anxiety response to something that isn't actually going to kill you. But here's where the hidden mind hack comes in, and this is what most people never learn. The amygdala doesn't respond to reality. It responds to your thoughts about reality. Let me say that again because it's so important. Your anxiety isn't triggered by what's actually happening in the world around you. It's triggered by the story your mind is telling you about what's happening. This is huge because it means that anxiety isn't actually about the external situation. It's about your internal narrative. And if you can change the narrative, you can change the anxiety. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Okay, so I just need to think positive thoughts and my anxiety will disappear. Not exactly. This isn't about toxic positivity or pretending everything is fine when it's not. This is about understanding a fundamental principle of how your mind works. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. The hidden mind hack is this: your thoughts are not facts, and you don't have to believe everything you think. I know that sounds simple, maybe even obvious, but stay with me because most people live their entire lives completely fused with their thoughts. They think a thought and immediately assume it's true. They have the thought, I'm going to fail, and they believe it without question. They think everyone's judging me and they accept it as objective reality. They think something bad is going to happen, and they treat it like a prophecy instead of a mental event. This is what psychologists call cognitive fusion, and it's the root cause of so much unnecessary suffering. When you're fused with your thoughts, you're essentially living in a virtual reality created by your own mind, and your body responds to that virtual reality as if it's real. But here's the mind hack. You can learn to diffuse from your thoughts. You can learn to observe them without getting caught up in them. You can create distance between yourself and your thinking, and when you do that, something magical happens. The anxiety loses its power. Let me give you a practical example of how this works. Imagine you have an important meeting tomorrow and you notice the thought, "What if I mess this up?" If you're fused with that thought, your brain hears it as a prediction, maybe even a certainty. Your amygdala responds to the perceived threat of messing up, and boom, you're anxious. Your heart rate increases. You start catastrophizing about all the terrible things that could happen if you mess up. Maybe you'll lose your job. Maybe you'll never succeed. Maybe everyone will think you're incompetent. And now you're in a full anxiety spiral. But what if instead, when that thought appears, you notice it and say to yourself, "Oh, there's that 'what if I mess this up' thought again. I'm having the thought that I might mess this up." Do you feel the difference? In the first scenario, you are the thought. In the second scenario, you're the observer of the thought. That shift, that tiny moment of awareness, creates space between you and the anxiety-producing thought. And in that space, the anxiety can't take hold in the same way. This is what's called metacognition, thinking about your thinking, and it's one of the most powerful tools you have for managing anxiety naturally. Now here's where this gets even more interesting. Most anxious thoughts fall into a few predictable categories, and once you learn to recognize these patterns, you can catch them in real time and defuse from them before they create a full anxiety response. The first category is what psychologists call catastrophizing. This is when your mind takes a situation and immediately jumps to the worst possible outcome. You send a text message and someone doesn't respond right away, and suddenly your mind is telling you they're angry at you, they hate you, they're going to end the relationship, you're going to die alone. You feel a strange sensation in your body, and your mind immediately decides it must be something serious. Maybe it's cancer, maybe you're dying, maybe you need to go to the hospital right now. This is catastrophizing, and it's one of the primary ways anxiety manufactures fake emergencies. The second category is mind reading. This is when you assume you know what other people are thinking about you, and it's almost always negative. Someone doesn't smile at you when you walk by and you immediately think they don't like me. You give a presentation, and you see someone yawn and you think, "I'm boring them, I'm terrible at this." Your boss wants to talk to you, and you immediately assume you're in trouble. The truth is, you have absolutely no idea what other people are actually thinking. That person who didn't smile might have just gotten bad news. That person who yawned might have been up all night with a sick kid. Your boss might want to talk to you about a promotion. But your anxious mind fills in the blanks with worst-case scenarios and then treats those scenarios as facts. The third category is fortune-telling. This is when your mind makes predictions about the future and treats them as certainties. This is never going to work out. I'm definitely going to fail. Something bad is going to happen. I know they're going to reject me. These thoughts feel like premonitions, but they're just thoughts. They're your mind trying to protect you from potential disappointment by expecting the worst. But all they actually do is create anxiety in the present moment about something that hasn't happened and might never happen. So here's the mind hack in action. When you notice an anxious thought, first, identify which category it falls into. Is this catastrophizing, mind reading, or fortune-telling? Fortune. Just naming the pattern creates distance. Then instead of arguing with the thought or trying to push it away, simply acknowledge it. There's my mind catastrophizing again. There's my mind pretending it can read minds. There's my mind trying to predict the future. This simple act of labeling, this moment of awareness interrupts the automatic anxiety response. You're no longer fused with the thought, you're observing it. And here's what's really cool: when you practice this enough, you start to see that these thoughts are just habits. They're not deep truths about reality, they're just patterns your mind has learned over time. And just like any habit, they can be changed. But there's another layer to this mind hack that takes it even deeper. And this is where the real transformation happens. Not only can you learn to diffuse from anxious thoughts, you can also learn to recognize the physical sensations of anxiety without adding more anxiety on top of them. This is what's called acceptance, and it's completely counterintuitive. For most people, when they feel the physical sensations of anxiety, their immediate reaction is to panic about the panic. They feel their heart racing and they think, "Oh no, something's wrong. What if I'm having a heart attack? What if this gets worse? What if I can't handle this?" And now they're anxious about being anxious, which creates even more physical sensations, which creates even more anxious thoughts, and you're caught in a feedback loop that just keeps intensifying. But here's the thing about the physical sensations of anxiety. They're uncomfortable, but they're not dangerous. Your racing heart isn't a sign that something's wrong, it's just adrenaline. Your tight chest isn't a heart attack, it's just muscle tension. Your shaky hands aren't a sign you're losing control, they're just a normal physiological response to stress hormones. These sensations are deeply unpleasant, I'm not minimizing that, but they can't actually hurt you. And when you stop fighting them, when you stop trying to make them go away, something paradoxical happens. They start to diminish on their own. This is because anxiety feeds on resistance. When you fight against the physical sensations, when you tense up and try to control them, you're sending a signal to your amygdala that there really is a threat, which causes it to sound the alarm even louder. But when you allow the sensations to be there, when you make space for them without resistance, you're sending a signal that everything is actually okay, there's no real danger here, and your nervous system starts to calm down. So here's how you put this part of the mind hack into practice. When you notice the physical sensations of anxiety, instead of fighting them or panicking about them, try this. First, take a moment to locate exactly where in your body you're feeling the anxiety. Is it in your chest, your stomach, your throat, your shoulders? Get really specific. Then, instead of trying to make the sensation go away, just observe it with curiosity. What does it actually feel like? Is it hot or cold? Is it heavy or light? Is it sharp or dull? Is it moving or still? This might sound strange, but when you investigate the sensation with genuine curiosity instead of fear, something shifts. You're no longer a victim of the sensation, you're an observer of it. And in that observation, the sensation often begins to change, soften, or even disappear. The key is not trying to make it change, just allowing it to be there and noticing what it actually feels like. This is the practice of acceptance, and it's incredibly powerful. Now, I want to address something important because I know some of you might be thinking, this all sounds great, but what about real anxiety disorders? What about people with generalized anxiety disorder, or panic disorder, or social anxiety disorder? Can a simple mind hack really help with those conditions? And the answer is yes, but with an important caveat. If you have a clinical anxiety disorder, this mind hack isn't a replacement for professional treatment. Therapy, particularly cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance and commitment therapy, and in some cases medication, can be life-changing for people with anxiety disorders. But here's the thing. Even in clinical settings, the techniques I'm sharing with you right now are foundational to evidence-based treatments for anxiety. Cognitive diffusion, metacognitive awareness, acceptance of physical sensations, these aren't just random mind hacks I made up. They're core components of therapies that have been proven in hundreds of research studies to be effective for treating anxiety. So whether you're someone who occasionally gets anxious in specific situations, or someone who struggles with chronic anxiety, these tools can help. The difference is just in how much practice and support you might need to implement them effectively. Now let's talk about why this approach is so different from what most people try when they're dealing with anxiety. The conventional wisdom about anxiety is that you need to eliminate it. You need to figure out what's causing it and remove that cause, or you need to distract yourself from it, or you need to think your way out of it by replacing negative thoughts with positive ones. But all of these approaches have a fundamental problem. They're based on the assumption that anxiety is the enemy and needs to be defeated. And when you approach anxiety as an enemy, you're locked in a battle you can't win because you're fighting against your own mind. The more you try to not think anxious thoughts, the more anxious thoughts appear. The more you try to avoid situations that make you anxious, the more your world shrinks and the anxiety gets stronger. The more you try to force yourself to feel calm, the more anxious you become about not being calm. This is the anxiety trap, and millions of people are stuck in it without realizing there's another way. The mind hack I'm teaching you is based on a completely different paradigm. Instead of trying to eliminate anxiety, you're learning to change your relationship with it. You're learning to see anxious thoughts as mental events rather than truths. You're learning to feel anxious sensations without being controlled by them. You're learning that you can have anxiety without being anxious, if that makes sense. The anxiety might be there, the thoughts and sensations might be present, but you're not fused with them. You're not fighting them. You're just allowing them to be there while you move forward with your life anyway. This is psychological flexibility. And it's the opposite of the rigid all-or-nothing thinking that keeps people trapped in anxiety. Instead of "I can't do this until the anxiety goes away," it becomes "I can do this, even though the anxiety is here." Instead of "I need to feel comfortable before I act," it becomes "I can act even while feeling uncomfortable." This shift is everything. Now, I want to give you a practical protocol you can use right now, today, the next time you notice anxiety starting to bubble up. This is a step-by-step process that combines everything we've talked about into one coherent practice. Step 1. Notice. The moment you become aware that anxiety is present, either as thoughts or physical sensations, simply notice it. You might say to yourself, "I'm noticing anxiety right now," or "Anxiety is here." This sounds almost too simple, but this moment of awareness is crucial. You can't work with something you're not aware of, and most people go through their entire day on autopilot, completely swept up in anxious thoughts without ever noticing that's what's happening. Step 2. Name the pattern. If the anxiety is showing up as thoughts, identify which category it falls into. Is it catastrophizing, mind-reading, or fortune-telling? You might say, "My mind is catastrophizing right now," or "There's my mind trying to predict the future again." If the anxiety is showing up as physical sensations, name what you're feeling. "I'm noticing tension in my chest," or "I'm feeling a racing heart." The act of naming creates distance and engages the rational part of your brain, which has a calming effect on the emotional part. Step 3. Make space. This is where you practice acceptance. Instead of fighting the thoughts or sensations, see if you can make space for them. You might imagine breathing into the uncomfortable sensation, or visualize the anxious thoughts as clouds passing through the sky of your awareness. The key is to adopt an attitude of allowing rather than resisting. You're not trying to like the anxiety or want it to be there. You're just acknowledging that it is there and giving it permission to exist without fighting against it. Step 4. Expand your awareness. When you're anxious, your attention becomes very narrow and focused on the threat, real or imagined. So deliberately expand your awareness beyond the anxiety. Notice what else is happening in this moment. What do you see around you? What sounds do you hear? What's the temperature of the air on your skin? Can you feel your feet on the ground? This isn't about distracting yourself from the anxiety. It's about putting the anxiety in context. Yes, there's anxiety here, and there's also all of this other stuff happening at the same time. This helps you see that the anxiety is just one small part of your experience, not the whole thing. Step 5. Move with purpose. This is the most important step. Once you've noticed the anxiety, named it, made space for it, and expanded your awareness, ask yourself what matters most to you in this situation. What action would move you toward the life you want to live? And then take that action, even if the anxiety is still there. This is where true freedom lives, not in the absence of anxiety, but in the ability to act according to your values, even in the presence of anxiety. If the anxiety is about a presentation you have to give, you give the presentation anyway. If the anxiety is about a difficult conversation you need to have the conversation anyway. If the anxiety is about trying something new, you try it anyway. This is how you break the power that anxiety has over your life, not by making it go away, but by proving to yourself that you can function, thrive, and move forward even when it's present. And here's what happens when you practice this protocol consistently. Over time, your brain learns something new. It learns that anxiety isn't actually dangerous. It learns that you can handle uncomfortable thoughts and sensations. It learns that taking action in the presence of anxiety doesn't lead to catastrophe. And as your brain learns these things, the anxiety response itself starts to decrease. Remember, your amygdala is a learning machine. It sounds the alarm when it perceives threat. But if you repeatedly show it that the things it's alarmed about aren't actually threatening, if you consistently respond to anxious thoughts and sensations with calm awareness and purposeful action rather than panic and avoidance, it starts to recalibrate. The alarm becomes less sensitive, the anxiety becomes less frequent and less intense. This is called habituation, and it's one of the most well-established principles in psychology. The things we're exposed to repeatedly without negative consequences eventually lose their power to frighten us. But here's the critical part. Habituation only works if you're not engaging in safety behaviors. Safety behaviors are the little things people do to try to control or reduce anxiety in the moment. Things like constantly checking your phone for reassurance, avoiding eye contact in social situations, rehearsing what you're going to say over and over, gripping the armrests during a flight, or always needing someone to be with you when you do something that makes you anxious. These behaviors might provide temporary relief, but they actually maintain the anxiety in the long run, because they reinforce the message that there really is something to be afraid of, that you really do need these protective measures to be safe. So part of this mind hack is learning to drop the safety behaviors and face the situation directly, with full acceptance of whatever anxiety shows up. This is called exposure, and it's one of the most effective treatments for anxiety that exists. But the way I'm describing it is a bit different from traditional exposure therapy. In traditional exposure, you deliberately put yourself in anxiety-provoking situations to prove to your brain that nothing bad happens. That's effective, but it can feel very clinical and forced. The approach I'm teaching you is more integrated into daily life. You're not seeking out anxiety-provoking situations necessarily. You're just refusing to let anxiety stop you from doing what matters to you. You're living your life on your terms, and when anxiety shows up, you practice the protocol. Notice, name, make space, expand awareness, move with purpose. Every single time you do this, you're rewiring your brain. You're creating new neural pathways that associate the previously feared situation with safety rather than danger. You're teaching your nervous system that it can handle discomfort without needing to sound every alarm. This is the hidden mind hack. It's not one thing. It's a comprehensive approach to relating to anxiety in a completely different way. And the more you practice it, the more natural it becomes, until eventually it's just how you operate. Anxiety might still show up from time to time. That's normal, that's part of being human, but it no longer controls you. It no longer stops you from living the life you want to live. You've hacked your own mind in the best possible way. Now, I want to leave you with one final thought. Everything I've shared with you in this video is based on decades of research in neuroscience, psychology, and cognitive therapy. But ultimately, knowledge isn't enough. You have to practice. You have to actually use these tools when anxiety shows up. It's like learning to play an instrument or learning a new language. You can watch all the videos and read all the books, but you only get better by actually doing it. So I want to encourage you, the next time you notice anxiety, try this approach. Don't try to fix it or fight it or make it go away. Just notice it, name it, make space for it. Expand your awareness and move forward with purpose. See what happens. You might be surprised at how powerful this simple shift can be. And if you found this video helpful, do me a favor and share it with someone who struggles with anxiety. This information can genuinely change lives, and the more people who understand these principles, the better.